Well, I thought I'd take a look at some number 4 reproducers because I have had some questions recently about them. The number 4 appears in late 1925, early 26, and it was a Victor Company reproducer. Was later used by HMV and Electrola for a brief period of time. They kind of disappear. HMV used them to at least 1931. I'm not sure how far past that. Electrola used them on the 106, probably up to the mid to late 30s. But I don't have a lot of information on Electrola machines. Well, these are number 4s off of various machines that I have. And some extras. Now, the original number 4 is this one. It was supposed to be sort of a stopgap reproducer to help play the high-fidelity electrically recorded records post-1923. They weren't ready yet with a true orthophonic reproducer, and they needed something that would handle those later louder electric records better. Really, the only difference here is the needle bar is changed to pivot style instead of the springs, and the diaphragm is slightly larger than the one found on the number 2. This is the original number 4 Victrola. It is an all brass body. That's front, here, the ring, and the back. You will always see on these, this one's been completely rebuilt, it's off what machine I play, that they will say Victrola 4, not 4A, Victrola 4. This is important because the 4A has a pot metal in its makeup, which was great in 1927 or whenever they did it. Not so good today, nearly 100 years later, because pot metal has a tendency to badly deteriorate and begin to crumble. Now, you'll notice that it says Victrola on the front. However, on the back of this one, it says 4A. Now, this one is about as good as you can expect from a pot metal original Victrola 4A. You can see the pot metal showing through. There are surface cracks. It's a bit warped. The front ring, you can see I don't know if that's showing up on camera, the ring's there. It's starting to show cracks. And here, if I can get the camera to focus, I can't. It's not really showing it. Oh yeah, you see it now. Right here, it's starting to crack and warp. This does actually play. I did rebuild it to the point it will play and seal. You can see there's a big piece had erupted out of the metal. But its days are numbered. But that is what a 4A looks like, Victrola 4A. Physically, appearance-wise, it looks just like the 4. And in the front, they look the same. But one is brass, one is pot metal. Major difference in price here because Victrola, the Victor Company, used pot metal for quite a while. They only use all brass for a few months. The very first ones will be all brass. So that makes them really difficult to find and expensive when you do. However, his master's voice, HMV. The Gramophone Company also used under license from Victor, the number 4 design. You can see that this little style ring here is absent on the HMV version. This is a smooth front ring. This is a very early one. They probably would be using this in 1926, around in there, 1927. This is off a 101, a front crank 101. The winding handle's in the front. It has the lettering under the diaphragm, just like the Victrola does. It is all brass. There's no lettering at all in the back. The only way you know it's all brass on this one is, one, the appearance is no cracks and warpage. But also, all of these that have the lettering under like this, they're always going to be brass, because at the very earliest ones, HMV kept the brass body for quite a while longer than Victrola did. They did it for years instead of months. So there's more of them around. Here's another. This is an all brass HMV number 4. Note it does say number 4 on it. This has the back lettering. All in the back. There's nothing under the diaphragm. And this is all brass. The ring, the back. This is the second version that they used. This is also off a 101. And here we have the third. This also HMV. However, The front ring is brass. Turn that around without dropping it. The back ring is pot metal. This one is actually in pretty good shape. However, what happens with these, because the pot metal tends to swell even the tiniest bit of swelling, they have a terrible tendency to crack when you try to replace the isolator gasket, but they also lock themselves into this brass ring. You try to get that apart, a lot of times it just splits into pieces and falls apart. It's gotten brittle with age. And notice that HMV continued to mark them as the number 4, not the 4A. Again, lettering on the back, and you can always tell the pot metal ones, assuming they have not been rebuilt, is they're going to have, you see how the isolator gasket is raised above? I'll show you the other one. It's raised above the level of the back, while with the original all brass 4, it is pretty much flush. That was a newer design. But this one is pot metal back, brass on the front. Pretty much a lost cause when you go to rebuild these. Very, very rarely do you ever get them apart. Now, where's the other one? Okay. This is the last version of the HMV number 4. As you can see, the front ring is no longer brass. It is badly deteriorated. It's bubbling all over. Starting to crack. The back, you can see, has its issues also. Again, it's only marked as a number 4, not 4A. And it has the raised isolator gasket. You go to try to get these gaskets out, they're usually pretty tight in there. And this collar here starts to split and crack. I've seen that. I did my best to rebuild this to make it at least borderline playable, which it actually is. But often you can't get the pivot screws out here, the pivot assembly to be cleaned. There's a little ball bearing in there. You can't adjust the needle bar properly. And sometimes it'll swell so bad, I'll show you one in a minute, that the body ring there actually has risen up to meet the needle bar right here. And they're touching, and that destroys the sound immediately. It's ruined. It's done at that point. The only, you see how bad that's cracking? The only way to really deal with this is to find one of these all brass ones and use that instead. They're out there. They show up on eBay all the time. They're not cheap. They are not cheap. Because everybody appreciates what they are, and a lot of U.S. machines are wearing HMV reproducers because American collectors cannot afford or cannot find one of these. All right, let's move on to Electrola. There you go. Electrola number 4. This is a rare all-brass Electrola number 4 off of an early Electrola marked 101. A little dusty. It's not been rebuilt yet. The machine itself is waiting service. But this is all brass, and it's identical, except for the lettering, to the all brass HMV. They look exactly the same. Very likely were made on the same assembly line in Hayes. I don't think at this point any part of that machine was being made in Germany. From what I've read and understand, that was that early 101, or all the 101s, were manufactured in Hayes and shipped over with German markings. Eventually, the Electrola will turn to this design, just like HMV did. You can see the similarities here. And that's all pot metal. It's pot metal ring, and it's pot metal on the back. From what I've seen on my 106s and 101s, Electrola didn't have this intermediate stage where you still had the brass ring in front. They went directly to pot metal just like Victor did. And you can see what's happened here. This one is swollen so much that the needle bar is now touching the body. You can't have that. It has no freedom of movement. It can't vibrate properly. Completely destroys the sound. I did try to rebuild this, but it was pointless. This is actually off a 106, not the 101, but you can see what happened to it. Total destruction. It's good for display item, but at this point you're better off getting a number 2 and fitting it on there. Now the 106 uses the isolator gasket with the larger mouth here. This was used on the orthophonic machines like the HMV 102, the Victrola 255, all of those. This gasket right here, the isolator gasket, can be taken out, not from this one because you'll crack it all the hell trying to do it. But if you had one that was all brass and it had this gasket in it, you could take this out, replace it, you know, take a number 2 reproducer or something like that and put this style of gasket in the number 2. It's a direct fit. There's no problems at all. Fits right in there. So you could use a number 2 Victrola or HMV, or even an no, not the Exhibition. I'm sorry about that. The number 2, you could use this on the 106. You could use it on orthophonic machines like the 102 to get rid of something like this, because the Orthophonics, the 102 has the 5A and the 5B. They have pot metal issues too, and sometimes they're simply impossible to find or just prohibitively expensive when you do. So if you want to play your machine right away, you can get, let me grab it for you. Get a number 2 like this. You see the similarities in the back gasket, the isolated gasket. I'll see if I can put that right there. Put this right next to it. You can see you can swap them. You can swap them, and you could use this where that went. And without swapping the gasket, you could use this where any of these went, the HMVs. The 101 did not use the larger isolator, the larger tone arm, so the hole remains the same size as the old 102. This is actually for another machine. That machine. And there's a few special ones I have here. I collect these. This is something you will not see every day. This is an original dealer box for a number 4, and inside an all brass number 4 is still there. It's never been on a machine. It's never been used. This is a brand new Victrola number 4 that I just lucked into. All brass number 4. She was a dealer extra, possibly. Obviously, when they got the number 4s, the dealers would offer these as upgrades to older machines. I have found number 4s on the Victrola 9, on the Victrola 50. So they were pushing them out there. I mean, that was normal. It was something they could sell. Just like they pushed the number 2s to replace the Exhibitions when the number 2 came out in 1919. But this one is in its original box. Brand new. For some reason, it was never sold maybe, or just never used. Now, I can't imagine in the first months of production that they actually had too many of these around as extras to sell. A lot of them were being used in machines, especially one that somebody paid good money for and apparently never used it. And over here, just because it's in the box, I'll show you. This is an unissued, in the original dealer box, Exhibition. Look at that, without dropping it. That somebody has tried to repair with cork. I don't know why. I really have no idea. Believe it or not, this actually does work. It actually even sounds pretty good. I guess the original gaskets were all nasty and cracked, so they took them out. Put new gaskets in. They must have broken the diaphragm doing it, so they repaired it. That often happens, the little screw here in the middle. They split, sometimes crumble, and they repaired it like this, and it worked. Just one of those things. But that does need to be rebuilt. But that's the original box that these Exhibitions came in. I don't know if this is, I'm sure this has been on a machine. It definitely has been on one of mine. Unlike the number 4, which does not appear to ever have been mounted on anything, but put that over there. And the last one in here, just because it's here, not because it's a number 4. This is the Victor Improved Concert. This one actually showed up on a Victrola 8. And it's going back on that Victrola 8 once it's been serviced. That's one of the machines in waiting. I haven't got to that one yet. These were supplied by dealers as an improvement on the Exhibition in the early years. This one's probably from 1912, 13, 14, somewhere in there. I haven't played this yet. I've heard them played, but I haven't played this one because this does need to be rebuilt. The gaskets will be original in there, and I am not going to screw around. It's going to get a full rebuild before I use it. And there you go. There is the lineup of number 4s for Victrola, HMV, and Electrola. And the next project in a few minutes I'll be working on is this. This has already been in a video. This is a Victor Victrola 50. It's all cleaned up now. It needs to be reassembled. The motor has been repaired. And it's got a rebuilt governor on it. And I discovered one of the governor's bearings in there. The little ball bearings that should be in that bearing cap was missing. Nice, always love that. Can't do that. When you lose things, you have to replace them. Don't just assume you can get away without a bearing. Screws everything up. And what else was missing on there? No, that was it for that. Everything else was good. This even actually had a replacement spring. Not a recent one, but a replacement spring all the same. Mainspring, I didn't have to do more than clean it and put it back in. But that is a project for in a little while. First off, anything else we got to cover on this? Electrola, HMV, and Victrola. Always keep your eyes open when you're at shows or even on eBay, because a lot of people don't know a whole lot about these, what they are, the history of them, how to recognize one from another. Sometimes these all brass number 4s pass under the radar. People don't realize what they are. They just think it's just another number 4 reproducer. I remember once buying one of the cheaper portables that Victrola put out in the late 20s, like 26, 27. What was it, a 2.6, 2.5, something like that. 1.5, I forget. Anyway, that machine was one of the ones that actually came straight from the factory with an all brass number 4. In the early years, and oftentimes today they could be found. This is a totally derelict machine. Smashed, rotten wood, everything. But I recognized in an auction that it had this reproducer on it. This is where this came from, actually. All brass number 4, worth 5 times what I was paying for the machine. And the seller had no clue, didn't even know what the machine was called, just an old junk phonograph to them. But sometimes you can get lucky and find it. This one actually goes on my Victrola 9. This is the one that I usually use on there. I just took it off just to show it and to show the differences. You can find them in accumulations at phonograph shows, assuming we ever have one again, you know, with all that's going on, and pick them out, and maybe you get one for $40 or $50 instead of $400. You never know. You never really know. And these, of course, show up from time to time. I know there's one on eBay right now. I think the seller wants something like 200 pounds. He'll probably get it. It's on UK eBay. A lot of times you find a junk machine, a really bad one, you might find one of these on there. You never know. So always pay attention, even to the junkers, because there could be something like this that's worth buying the whole machine just to get it. But there you go. Those are the number 4 reproducers and the number 4A. 4A, number 4, HMV number 4, and the rest, well, actually all HMV number 4s are number 4s. And the Electrola.